Hello, guys.
What's up, homies?
What's going on? How are you doing, Pab?
We did a nice intro for this, didn't we?
Yeah, we should probably.
Actually, I kind of like
I was
it. That was
gonna
random.
do, you know, on The Office where Mike was like, "Good morning, Vietnam." I was gonna do that. I didn't know if anyone would get it now, so I just left it.
You should have done it next week. Maybe next week. How is everybody?
Yeah, I'm doing great. Fantastic. How about you guys?
Nice, fresh haircut, Ragnar.
Yes, sir. I had
Looking
to
sharp, mate.
get it done before I leave for Asia because I'm not taking any chances down there.
Nice.
No, they'll give you a short back and fuck me up.
Yeah, anyway, we're back with another episode. A lot to cover, apparently, especially on the XRP ledger. I'm not as caught up as you guys on that topic, but I'll let you guys take the lead of that. But we also have some exciting crypto news to head into. Do you have anything you want to say before we dive straight into it?
No, I actually think there's quite a lot to say. I'm quite excited because, like, for the last few days, I've been thinking, oh, there's not like loads to talk about. Like, I'm getting frustrated with the space, but then actually, if you take a step back, that is kind of what we need to talk about. So there is actually quite a lot to say because I feel like we're in the eye of the storm, but like we'll get into it now because we're kind of just waiting, aren't we? In this like this sort of period, and you can see it in the charts, but you can see it in like what everyone's thinking as well, and we can get into that in a second.
All right, awesome. Let me share my screen right here because first of all, we have a pretty bullish sentiment with the Uniswap case because they basically settled for a fine of 175K, which obviously is not a ton to the Uniswap team, and a pretty bullish settlement for Uniswap and the crypto space right there. I think we're just gonna go through all of these cases or news right here because there's not too much to cover on each specific one. But we have the Coinbase CLO saying that he's encouraged by the Harris campaign reaching out. Basically, the Harris campaign reached out to Coinbase, asking them about how they can approach a new regulatory framework for digital assets, etc., which could mean we could have a pro-crypto Congress in 2025 on either sides. We also have the Coinbase CFO saying that the Harris campaign now accepts crypto donations via Coinbase, which is quite cool. So both campaigns on both sides basically accepts crypto payments. And we also have Qatar unveiling their brand new digital assets framework, following in the footsteps of the UAE, probably also wanting some crypto adoption and innovation happening in their region. So what do you think of all of this, guys? I'll let Pav take the lead here.
That was a very good summary, Ragnar. Very good summary.
Thank you, sir.
But yeah, I mean, there's not really too much more to add really with the whole like Uniswap thing. It seems to be kind of settled 175K in the grand scheme of things. It isn't like too detrimental, especially to them. I think the products that the CFTC actually had an issue with, they've removed anyway. So I guess going forward, it seems to be all good. They just can't release certain products that use leverage. I think I can't remember the ins and outs, but it was quite interesting to hear some of the comments made by one of the commissioners in the CFTC. So I think there's 5 in total, and one of them was basically alluding to he thought we were in a world or in a place where we would be showing digital asset like platforms guidance opposed to just attacking them, which is kind of normally the case. But instead, unfortunately, today's not that day. So it kind of sees at least it's getting recognised. At least we have one of the commissioners within the CFTC kind of highlighting the issue that's quite apparent in the US. But yeah, I think not really too much to add in regards to that. I just found the Coinbase whole situation a bit funny. How obviously the SEC are suing Coinbase and Kamala Harris is accepting donations through Coinbase. It just doesn't make sense, and it just makes me laugh. And that's all I've really got to say in regards to that. It's just a bit of a show right now in the US. And yeah, the Qatar framework is bullish, definitely bullish. UAE are quite forward looking. That whole region is really forward looking when it comes to digital assets, and yeah, that comes to no surprise to me.
Yeah, and I would just jump on the same sort of bandwagon as you have. With the CFTC and Uniswap, I think that's it's like a nothing. It's a nothing fine, and they probably just wanted them to remove the like you were saying the aspects they didn't want. But as far as I'm aware, there's still a Wells notice from the SEC and at Uniswap about potentially trading securities. This is where the issue like arises. Like you got 2 regulators inside one jurisdiction. I know that they regulate different things. For like, obviously, the SEC regulating securities, CFTC like futures trading and commodities. But you'd think that they'd speak to each other and be like, "Oh, which jurisdiction does this fall under? This part falls under mine. This part falls under here." And like, that's where the issue is, and that's kind of what the CFTC commissioner was saying. I kind of feel like the CFTC feel if they don't litigate or regulate by like enforcement with lawsuits, then they just don't make any legal money, and the CFTC and the SEC will probably have certain mandates per year of how much money they need to bring in. So it's a flawed system in that sense, rather than it just being like certain regulators that are the issue, although I do feel like certain regulators are the issue. But it kind of forces, if the SEC act in that way, it almost forces the CFTC to act in a similar vein. Otherwise, they're not going to make anything from like any fines and penalties that they probably have to make a certain amount a year that the government asks them to bring in. So like it's a bit of a weird one in that sense. But then yeah, the whole like, I don't want to get into the Harris stuff too much because it just like winds me up because she speaks out of both sides of her mouth. Like, and the CFT and this SEC are doing the same thing with Coinbase. How can the SEC or Harris be letting Coinbase accept donations for her when they're suing Coinbase at the same time? It's like, I know they might be about different issues like yielding products or whatever, but it's still, I don't know. It's like, oh, you can give me money, but like we're still going to be after you. So that's a bit of a weird one. But as far as Qatar goes, this is what I wanted to talk about when we started the podcast. I said we're going to get into like positive things are happening. Like that's massively positive. It's another jurisdiction that's like providing framework. Maybe they want entrepreneurs to come there, but it's just another option. Like I feel in the background, there's a lot that is positive that's going on with crypto, even though price action at this point isn't like reflecting that, or it hasn't been for like last few months. Remember that we're still like up like 50K sort of region for Bitcoin, and you're having all this positivity happening around the world, whilst there's also uncertainty around the world and people are looking for places to go and things to do. And also in the UAE region, I'm pretty sure this week Crypto.com have done a deal with Standard Chartered Bank in the UAE to allow fiat on and off ramps in like with that partnership, like instant or near real time on and off ramps into and out of the dirham with Crypto.com and Standard Chartered. I'm not sure. I read an article about that on the like Khalid Times, which is quite a respectable like news outlet out here in Dubai. So I've not used it myself, so I can't say that it's definitely real or false, or if it's active right now. But I read that article this week saying, and I think I shared it on Twitter as well, saying that on and off ramps into and out of dirhams with Crypto.com and Standard Chartered, like there's a lot happening that is positive for the space, but at the same time, we're just in that period where it's just September just feels indecisive, and I can get into that as well. Like, actually, I'm just going to quickly touch on that because obviously I touch on the macro as well. Like, I'm very interested in the macro. I wouldn't say I'm an expert in macro. I spend a lot of my time and have done over this bear market trying to learn about it, but I obviously still have knowledge gaps because I'm self-taught. But people who I really respect in the macro space, specifically like Arthur Hayes, Andreas Larsen, and Michael Howell from Cross Border Capital, they kind of have different opinions. Arthur Hayes has flip-flopped. He basically said September was going to be good, and then all of a sudden now he's saying he's not sure if it is because of RRP. Andreas Larsen says, looking at history and seasonality, the best performing asset in September is the dollar, which means everything else does badly, essentially, like whether it's equities, even commodities, or crypto specifically. And we all know that crypto, everyone's seen that chart circulating, that crypto normally does badly in September. But then Michael Howell's saying we're coming into a period of like increased liquidity, whilst the DXY is falling because the dollar's weakening against the yen. It's like a double bubble for liquidity. So people who I truly respect, even they don't understand and know what's coming for September. So it's very natural for us to be in this range. It's reflected by price action, just chopping up and down, because no one really knows. Like, it doesn't take much momentum to move us one way or another into these liquidity pools, because everyone's sort of sitting there like, I actually don't really know what's happening in September. But thrown on top of that, you're seeing like a subpoena to Nvidia, like one of the biggest momentum plays in equities this year. And then today, potentially not a subpoena to Nvidia. Nvidia said they're not being subpoenaed, but the stock price dropped 10% and now it's bounced. And then at the same time as that, we're also looking, as I said, like at the DXY. And the DXY is like on this level that it could go either way. And next week we've got CPI, which comes out on the 11th of September, and we're about to wipe out. Well, the last like 4 months, I think we've done either a 0.1 or a 0 or a minus 0.1 in like CPI, meaning like year over year. So like, see that inflation's decreased or stayed the same by like 0.1. At this time last year, it was a 0.5. So we're about to wipe potentially a 0.5 off the CPI year over year reading. So, for example, now it's 2.9. And if we did what we've done for the last few months, that means the CPI reading is going to come out at like 2.4. Even if we've got a 0.1, it's going to come out at 2.5. And what does that mean for the markets? And what does that mean for like what Powell's about to do with his interest rate cuts? Is that probably pushes him more towards maybe a 50 basis point hike, or does it leave it at 25? And then again with the non-farm payroll, I think that comes out tomorrow. And this is why I think everyone's so like on edge, because all these different variables are all happening at the same time, just 1 month before they run up to the elections. So it's like everyone's kind of like waiting to see if someone takes the first move, and then I think they're going to follow through from there. So I just wanted to get that out there, because it's not unnatural to feel like we don't know what's going on right now, because no one really knows what's going on, because there's so many variables that things could literally change in like a day, one way or another, like positively or negatively. And the last thing I'll quickly say about like equities, for example, is I was listening to a podcast, and I don't know which podcast it was, Blockworks podcast just now, and they made a very good point that I hadn't really thought about. It's like a lot of the retail who trade like just every now and then, they've been trading AI stocks this year, and it's helped like AI stocks like run up really quick. And if AI does have a bit of a cool down period, is that capital that then would rotate into crypto? And I thought that was quite an interesting take. So if we do start to see a bit of a cool off in equities, often it is correlated with crypto, but is some of that capital going to flow into crypto? They're not directly correlated, but they do move-ish together. You normally find when equities are up, crypto's up. If equities drop, crypto drops. But are some of these like Magnificent Seven, like momentum-based stocks, extra capital that retail are pushing in, is that gonna be something that rotates into crypto if that does start to pull back? So that's another like variable to put into that as well. Sorry, I was gonna turn the aircon on. Aircon absolutely.
Go for it. Yeah, it's a good take. Do you have anything you want to add, Pav, on that? On like the macro market in general?
Not really. I think he's pretty much hit the nail on the head when he's talking about uncertainty. Like you can see it on Twitter as well. Like he's identified like 3 people specifically, but you can see it all over the market, whether people specialize in macro, crypto, whatever. Like there's a lot of uncertainty, there's a lot of differing opinions, but this is a type of behavior we tend to see anyway when the market tends to do this. Like we've rallied so much, we've come down so much, everyone's like on edge, everyone's like really anxious with the markets, and then that kind of sparks these types of conversations of, oh, what about this, what about that, what's this going to do? And that's what's kind of happening right now. And it's almost like, it feels to me that we're coming up to a peak in that kind of area of uncertainty and anxiety within the market. And then this is when we tend to see like a pretty volatile move, whether it's going to be to the upside or downside. Like who really knows right now? But yeah, I totally agree with what he was saying.
Yeah, I think there's so much happening for the rest of the year with the elections and that as well. So I feel like it's definitely going to be very volatile during these times. And XRP has held up pretty well during these dips. What's going on in the XRP world?
Well, yeah, obviously we'll properly dive into this, but we've had a lot of like announcements this week concerning the XRPL with like the smart contract capability, the sidechains, etc. It's really exciting to see this, especially being XRP holders and being like newly involved in the DeFi space now. I've been spending a lot of time reading into DeFi this year and like studying it, etc. with my job and all that kind of things, and now seeing it kind of emerge within the XRPL and that kind of space, and almost like trying to forward look and look at the potential that it has and what can potentially come out of it is honestly super exciting. Like you can get yourself in a rabbit hole, like reading and thinking with what's to come with the XRPL. But yeah, what shall we go into first with this, Will?
I don't mind. There's obviously.
Should we?
loads have just happened. So maybe let's just touch on the lawsuit aspect of it first, because we can get that out of the way pretty quickly, like the Ripple SEC aspect. I'll try and just surmise that pretty quickly. It's quite. Do you want me to share something on that, or do you want me to? Yeah, I'll share. Let me just quickly let me get my Twitter open, and I'll just share basically what's happened. I want to just surmise it quickly because I've been covering it quite a lot. But essentially, Ripple needs to pay a fine to the SEC, as we know from the remedies, which is like, I don't know what it was. I can't remember. 100. What was it, Pat? Do you remember 127 mil or something around there? Was that right?
It was 125 mil or something like that.
125 mil. And the SEC have 60 days to appeal the case. Let me share this now. The SEC have 60 days to appeal this case. And Ripple are basically saying to the SEC, are you going to appeal? And the SEC are basically saying, like, we don't know. Is this sharing yet?
Yeah. There we go.
Yeah, the SEC are basically saying, oh, we don't know. So that's basically what's happening here. And then my two takeaways are, so James Phelan obviously reported it. He's a key, he reports the main like law news for the SEC and Ripple, or law news in general for crypto. And basically, because Ripple haven't yet decided, or the SEC haven't yet decided if they want to appeal or not, Ripple actually have to pay after 30 days at the end of the decision, which would be in 2 days' time. And Ripple don't want to pay the SEC, then for the SEC to appeal and then give Ripple the money back and have earned interest on the 125 mil or whatever it is that Ripple would be given to the SEC, for then the SEC to give it back and then keep the interest or whatever. So what Ripple have done is, with the SEC's agreement, put it in like a trust or a bond or whatever, like it's called a stay, to basically keep it locked. So if the SEC don't appeal, they will get the money 30 days after the last date of appeal, which would be the 7th of October, so a month and 2 days from now. And then basically, Jeremy Hogan, who's a key attorney in the space, has said the SEC most likely hasn't made a decision on whether they want to appeal yet. And he said, why? Because filing a notice of appeal would only take 15 minutes, and then they have 70 days to actually file the appeal brief. So realistically, they probably haven't appealed haven't decided if they're going to appeal, because they could just do that and then give themselves 70 days to write the exact appeal that they want. And I said on my YouTube this morning, it's like, as much as it pisses me off, with the SEC, if you take it from a completely neutral perspective, and if you were just a lawyer, with no bias one way or another, and you're working for the SEC, it's a lot of money, obviously, and you've got to also consider some of the verbiage potentially in the ruling from the judge that you may or may not agree with. So it's not as simple as take 125 mil and then just be like, okay, that's it, case done. So I do think they obviously have quite a lot to think about. Huge case, they've tried to sue them for 2 billion, getting offered 125 mil. Ripple are like, yeah, okay, cool, we'll pay it. And they're like, is that right? And they haven't worked that out yet. Or they could just be mugging Ripple off. That's the other thing that I think is if they are just vindictive or whatever, they could just be waiting until October the 7th and just leaving Ripple in the dark on that. So that's my basic understanding and opinion of what's happening with the lawsuit. Is that about right, do you think, if you guys have been covering that?
Yeah, I think that's bang on, to be fair. I mean, I've only read a little bit into all this this latest development within it, but I feel you've actually just improved my understanding of it anyway, so I'm sure you've helped a lot of people understand that. I think we can move on to the exciting stuff. The XRPL developments.
What do you want to touch on here? Yeah, because I'll just get some documents open for whatever you want to touch on here as well.
Yeah, I think we split it up into the key developments this. They kind of came out within their blog post that Ripple posted, and kind of dissects it from smart contract capabilities to the EVM sidechain development. Talk about the bridge as well that they're going to be using. So I feel like it all kind of comes into one bigger picture when you start talking about all 3 or 4 aspects of it. But actually, do you want to? I don't know too much about the AI Metaverse tech company. The Futureverse announcement that they made. I've not really read into that at all. I'm sure a lot of people might have not read into that.
Well, I can give you a breakdown of my understanding of this. Basically, it's been I don't know if blockchain week's the right thing, but in Korea and Japan, I think it's developer blockchain week or something like that. But Ripple have basically got a strong relationship with both Korea and Japan. In fact, like I think Korean exchanges hold something quite a lot, like 8 billion XRP. I think it's of circulating supply. It's quite a high percentage, like 17 between. I can't remember if it's 17 or 27%. So they've got in Korea itself like quite a strong footing. But also in Japan, like SBI Holdings actually one of the biggest like financial companies in Japan, and they hold like a 6% shareholding in Ripple, the company. And as you know, like Yoshitaka Kitao, chairman of SBI, is very close with Ripple. And there was that famous saying that like Japan's going to be using XRP, or like Japanese banks will be using XRP by 2025. That's been out since like 2018. There's always been a speculation in the XRP community because of that massive connection with both Japan and Korea there for Ripple. And then at this event, we actually saw a few announcements, and it's kicked off some controversy in the XRP community. But just to get into what the announcements were, I'll get into the first one, which is about, as Pav said, the AI Metaverse company Futureverse. They're basically partnering with Ripple, and Ripple are going to be custodying their assets. So that's including, as far as I understand, and they're also using like the XRPL for their NFTs. But as far as I understand, assets for the game, but also assets as in like their company's assets. So what is Futureverse and Root Network? Well, it's something that I spoke about a while ago. I think they're going to give my best synopsis of this from just what I know. I haven't looked into them for a while. Price action has been slow. So not just directing that at them, I mean in the markets, I've just been focused on what I've been focused on. They're essentially a mixture of a few different companies, from like AI all the way through to like creating a metaverse as well. And they're partnered with Ready Player One, who's the film. If you don't, I don't know if you've seen it, but like, you know, where they put like the VR goggles on and they go into like a metaverse. And essentially they're trying to create, and they have legal partnership with them, and also I think with like Warner Brothers as well. So I think they're quite a big like player in the like, or have connections in the film game industry, and they're building a metaverse battle royale game that is on the XRP ledger, and they have like, and the Root network basically has Root token, and then they use XRP for gas on the Root network. As far as I understand, like I've used the network a bit. It was a while ago when it was first opening up, and that's essentially like what I know about them as a company. They also have, I think it's called Altered State Machine AI or something like that. There's like an AI company or an AI token that they've trying to integrate like these. I think there's 12 different companies. They're all trying to integrate all together to create like different aspects of like a completed metaverse game, AI, like all these different things with some big players and some big IP. So that's as far as what I know about it. Obviously, that talks about the XRPL DEX there for liquidity. And for those who don't know, the XRP actually has the oldest DEX in existence, because on the base, like on the layer one, the XRP actually is a DEX, has like DEX functions. But yeah, that's essentially it. Actually, I spoke to in my DMs, that actually might be him, because I spoke to Aaron McDonald, who is the CEO of Futureverse, a while ago in DMs, speaking to him about getting him on a Twitter Spaces. But I could just bring him on here and we could just have a chat with him about what Futureverse is. So that is, he could give us a better understanding of that probably than I've just given there. But so basically, I think it's a game metaverse thing that's coming out. And then going on to the second announcement, so that's pretty positive. What for me, that shows that like Ripple are taking a good look and putting some weighting behind the fact that a metaverse and gaming is probably going to play some aspect of a bigger aspect of our future, and they're probably trying to be focused more towards consumer and retail as well as institution. But this one is the one that's like caused controversy in the XRP community. Ripple and the broader XRP community are committed in bringing new programmability, including smart contracts, to the XRPL developer ecosystem through the XRPL EVM sidechain, which is already in the works, as well as native capabilities on the XRPL mainnet. Well, the EVM sidechain, I think, is already in development by like a few different people, like Axelar and Persist are two that come to my mind. And there's also Vitseven has created Hooks and Xamarin, which is like an app which do have some smart contract capability. As far as I'm aware, like I'm not in tune on that side of things like as much as I probably should be. But the reason why things like kicking off a little bit in the space are because of the potential integration of the XRP of this smart contract capability into the XRPL mainnet, because at the Apex Summit, David Schwartz, who's Chief Technology Officer at Ripple, who's one of the people who actually created the network, the XRP ledger itself, he basically said there's no way that we'd integrate smart contracts because there's problems like that could cause problems like congestion or whatever with the network. Something that like Solana obviously do see or have seen in the past is like when loads of people are trying to execute, there can be problems and network can go down. And I think that's one of the reasons why they didn't want to make any changes to the base chain itself, because they didn't want something like that. They didn't want to compromise. He said that he didn't want to compromise like speed or price in terms of, and you'd have to compromise something so you didn't get congestion. I think that's along the lines of what's going on. But then he's 180'd in the last 3 months and come out and said, actually, let's get smart contracts on the chain. And then because some developers in the ecosystem, I need to be careful what I say because I don't want to get like clipped up by people online and just like singled out. But my understanding is that because they're not automatically implementing the solution that's potentially already there, being hooks, that all the developers are angry with Ripple because Ripple don't fund every project that every single developer builds on the XRP ledger. And they also, I can understand why devs are angry, or like some devs are angry, but like I feel like it's just a mob of angry devs that have had their specific projects not funded, who have like kind of joined together to say that everything that Ripple do is bad. But Ripple also didn't say they wouldn't directly implement hooks. They just said that they need to have a proper look at it. And I feel like this has been quite a fast decision from Ripple, and just being like, oh, like fuck it, let's just introduce smart contracts, like let's just open our customer base basically and get more retail on chain and potentially more developers, because we've seen clearly, we can see that chains that are most active with developers normally appreciate in value, but also network activity, which makes sense because if people are building things, the likelihood is some of the things are going to be good and then some people want to use it. So that obviously makes sense. And I think it's a positive announcement, but it's just been spun in a negative way because people in the space just like, even though people in the community have been screaming at them and making their own examples of like how you could create smart contracts on the chain and spending a lot of their own time and money, and I understand that, in developing this, as soon as it comes out, they're saying, oh, it's negative. You should have rang me and implemented the one that I've made. And then everyone else is like, yeah, you should have done that. And it's like, and that's why there's so much like negativity in the space, essentially. That's my understanding anyway. I could be wrong. But I'm also trying not to like name names. And because the person who actually has done the most, in my opinion, from the outside, is Futureverse, and he did write an open letter, which was emotional, like that he put his emotion into, but he's not really been the one instigating the negativity particularly. He's just saying like why he's frustrated, and I can understand why he is. And then a lot of people jumped off the back of that and like spun it into ways that makes it even more negative than it is. And people blaming Ripple to say that Ripple don't fund projects that they should fund. They promised to fund more things and they haven't funded things. But then on the other hand, Ripple actually apparently did fund hooks, which is the main development in terms of smart contract capability. But it's just because people have funded a lot of things out of their own pocket and made things out of their own pocket, and they see that Ripple should be funding it. So that's the controversy with XRP at the minute. So it has been kicking off quite a lot. But I would actually like to argue here, any news is good news in the crypto space, because at least now, like, people are alive and kicking. People have got an opinion on something, whether it is bullish or bearish. So I'm just going to leave you guys to digest all that and get at me with questions or pick up on parts I've missed.
Yeah, I do have a question, just because people listening might have the similar question as well. What's the difference between hooks and smart contracts? Like, is there a core fundamental difference between them?
Yeah, and so David's right. Again, I'm not a dev, so I don't know specifically, but from what I understand, this is one of the issues that David Schwartz has, is that because he's never really thought about it too much, he always said that he didn't want to compromise anything in terms of speed or price with the ledger. He's just never really put too much consideration into it. And then he's essentially like read through hooks, and he's worried that if he implemented hooks to the main chain, it would slow the chain down, or there would be potentially would. And that's always been his issue against smart contracts in general. So I think what they're trying to do, from my, again, limited understanding, what Ripple is suggesting is they want some sort of smart contract capability, but maybe not to the extent that like the Ethereum virtual machine, like what you can do on Ethereum, because you have to compromise somewhere in crypto, whether it's, as I said, speed, price, or like capability of the network. And so from what I understand, hooks is good, but it either might not be too simple, or like it might not be fast enough, or something along those lines, and that's why it's not automatically been implemented. But it also might be they just haven't like made a complete decision, but they also don't want to take the chance on implementing something to the layer one that could damage the network that's been like obviously active and successful and not like failed since inception. Well, there was a rumor that it failed in like 2012 or something, but obviously I don't remember that personally. So yeah, that's my understanding, is that like they have smart contract capability with hooks, but maybe not as like complex as what it would need, like as what the EVM is. And the EVM, that's why they're having the sidechain, the smart contract capability on the EVM sidechain. But we also don't know from what perspective Ripple wants smart contract capability. Like, do they want it for something specific that isn't included by hooks? Like, and I don't know what the answer to that is. For example, do they want it for certain like escrow capability, or loan capabilities, or something for an institutional client, and that's why they've decided, or other things like that. That's why they've decided, oh, like maybe we should have smart contracts, and maybe their aspect of that isn't ticked by hooks, or maybe hooks would potentially slow down the network and they don't want to take that chance. Like, I feel like they're trying to compromise somewhere, but we don't know where the compromise is. That's my perception of it anyway.
Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't know there was so much controversy, obviously regarding all that. But from an outside perspective, from someone who doesn't really read as much into it as potentially you and other people in the XRP community, it just seems like they're trying to almost cater for a broader audience, like you said, with whether it be for specific institutional instruments that they want to introduce into the XRPL, which hooks maybe might not cater for, or something like that. But that just seems from the outside. But it's interesting to see why he's done it 180 and why that reason is. Do you know what I mean? Like, without trying to speculate too much.
Yeah, that's right. I know Matt's just about to jump in there, but I just wanted to say that also remember that they've got the RLUSD stablecoin like income in, and Brad Gardenhouse actually in Korea said that that's going to be weeks, not months. And so is it going to be, do they want smart contract capability for some areas of DeFi they might not be able to, like that might not be accessible at the minute, between, and maybe opportunities between like the RLUSD and XRP and like these sorts of things. So it's difficult to know exactly, because it is a company look like Ripple is a company like functioning for profit, but also like devs are just angry specifically because Ripple put some money aside to fund development on the network and they haven't spent it, and basically just because and they think that because they're liked in the community that Ripple should fund them, and because their project is liked by the community, Ripple should fund it. Then when they don't, they get angry and then say, oh, we're going to leave the chain or whatever. And it's just like, I can see it from both sides of the spectrum. Like I tried to say in my videos, like if you have built a community, then you should be happy with that you've built a community, and you shouldn't expect capital just because you built a community and potentially an application. But on the other hand, you have built a community within a certain like area, and so you would expect that they probably would fund you. The issue I have is just when they expect it, and then because they don't get it, then people get like angry about it, and then they band together, and then they all get angry together. So I can see why they're frustrated, but I also like, I think it's just a bit childish, to be completely frank. If it was just a normal business, like if we're talking about business in general, it would be like, oh, if you built something that was good for the US and the US government didn't pay you to do it, would you expect the US government to pay you, even if American citizens use your product? And I don't think the answer is yes. I think the answer is no. I think that you should, if they want to then pay you, or they think they should, or you've done it for the good of the country or made it systemically important, then yeah. But if you just do it because you wanted to make a project that you think people should pay you for because you've captured attention of the audience, I personally don't believe so, because you still have that community. But that's my opinion on that.
Yeah, I'd be interested to hear more from the team about like what they're specifically trying to achieve with implementing smart contracts. Because from the outside perspective, I haven't read much on it. Similar to what Pat said, it seems like they're trying to get like a broader audience, attract more devs and more users. Because they've obviously seen on other smart contract chains that like more users and devs normally means better price action. But also since XRP is so heavily towards institutions, obviously security and reliability is like the most important thing for institutions, I feel like. So they obviously can't really
Compromise
on that. Yeah.
No, I think you're actually bang on there, Matt. I think that's something else that the community are a bit angry about, because there's not been like enough like two-way discussion. And I think that's something that hopefully comes out of this in a positive way, that there's more like integration, or at least like acknowledgement of people in the community, whether they're going to fund them or not. There should just be more constant communication with the community. And I actually do think that will come out of this. But I just think people need to stop throwing shit at each other. But it's standard. It's standard when price action is bad for a while. Like you see it in every chain. Like as soon as price action goes negative, or not a lot happens for a while, people get the backup about things, and people make sub communities within communities, and all of a sudden everyone hates each other. But then as soon as price action goes up 50%, 100%, everyone will be like, I was going to say something inappropriate there, but everyone will be like friends again.
Yeah. And especially for I feel like XRP is looked at as a very serious project, obviously targeting more institutional clients than that. So I feel like if they're implementing smart contracts, trying to become more like, for example, Solana, people start launching all sorts of products and meme coins and that. I'm not sure if that's a good thing for XRP, because they're looked at as such like a serious project. But yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a hard one. I think we can clearly see that with developer activity, there is increased participation. That's like not factual, but definitely pretty correlated. But what do you want the chain to do? Like, there's already different chains doing different things. If I was going to speculate completely, it's that in the finance world, like things move so slowly that they're kind of like kicking the can down the road until people are ready to start to move into the financial industry more. And then in the meantime, they're like, oh, well, we should probably do more to engage the community, because we've still got 45 billion XRP sitting in escrow that gets released and locked up slowly, probably about 100, 200 a month actual inflation. And so what are we going to do? Like in the meantime, if people don't want to, if it could be an indefinite amount of time before people start running on crypto rails because of regulatory reasons or whatever, like what are we going to do in the meantime? There's no point in us just sitting here just doing what we're doing now, if participation of the network is just like getting slower. And I also think it's a good test to see like what's going to happen in the future, because putting weight on the metaverse is something that I've always spoken about, and that we've spoken about in terms of gaming. It's like, is a lot of business going to be done there in the future? So letting people use the network, or proactively supporting companies that are like metaverse companies, is that where the future of business and finance is going to go anyway? So I think it's an interesting discussion. It's interesting in what they're doing. But to be completely honest, if we're in the crypto space, we're here for like, us as retailers, we're here for like price appreciation. And you get price appreciation from hype and narrative after months or a long time of consolidating, accumulation, whatever. And the narrative breaks you out of like these long trending periods often. And then as soon as you start to then get announcements, people roll onto them. And I think that it's just good that there are some announcements coming out after this like long period. And I don't know if it will positively affect price, because it can also do the same. Like after a long period and you have a negative announcement, that can be negative for price action. But it's a step in the right direction in terms of like, if you're a retail investor, you should be looking at any narrative that comes out, whether you completely agree with it or not, as something positive, in my opinion. Like just as you would if you were holding any other asset.
Will any of the XRP team talk at Token 2049 as well? Do you know? Do you know if we can expect any more announcements in 2 weeks?
I'm not sure, but they have Ripple. Ripple have Swell in November, so that's
Okay.
like normally where it's more institutional based. Obviously, I went to the Swell in Dubai last year, and the difference between that and like I went to the Cardano event as well. Cardano was full of retail, which is great, and like people were very excited about Cardano actually. And I thought it was a good event. But then I went to Swell after, and it was just completely different. It was just full of like corporates, so that whether that's like banks or institutions in general. And I just thought like they are playing different games. Like it seemed from the outside, and so the answer is I don't know, because if they are trying to direct more towards retail now or open up possibilities, like who knows what is next for the XRP ledger and Ripple, because they clearly have relationships with banks. It's just whether the banks are willing or allowed to use the product. And then in that, like I said, in the I'm just speculating, but in the meantime, what do you do? I do presume though, more and more banks, even if it's slowly, will start to, if they want to use the product, will start to use it sooner rather than later, especially in like regions like we're in here, where they look to be more like free to use digital assets in general, maybe BRICS nations. I'm not saying they're all going to use the XRP. I'm just saying that there is the possibility is like getting closer for people to use crypto. So maybe, I don't know. It's a weird one. It's a hard one to speculate on at the minute, because if you'd asked me 2 years ago, I'd just said XRP is just focused on payments. And now, for whatever reason, whether it's because they can't get banks on board or whether it's just because they want to open the doors to more people to participate in different ways as well. I actually don't know what the answer to that is. But if a narrative changes and comes in, I think, or more narratives come, like you say, at Swift, there is normally some announcements at Swell, sorry. There are normally some announcements. So let's see. And it's all coming around the same time. Interestingly, the SEC last date of appeal is the 7th of October. Swell was November. The FTX payments are the 7th of October. Like, it's lining itself up to be, for crypto in general, but also for XRP and the XRP ledger, to be the potential for positive price action is coming. And we can see that like from the charts as well.
Yeah, should be interesting to see. The rest of the year should be exciting for the market as a whole. Do you want to take us into the last segment, Pav? If you have any way you want to angle that?
Let's do it. Yeah, we're 43 minutes in anyway, but we're good.
Yeah.
We're good for time. Hopefully we're not. It's been very informative so far anyway, so I feel like a lot of value has been taken from that. So obviously shout out to Will for that. Very interesting. But yeah, just continuing the theme, like we said last week, I don't know how much in depth we went into it, but having a bit of a personal section within the broadcast, I think it's important just to kind of help people understand who we are, and just maybe they'll gain some more value from it, opposed to just, crypto news and all this kind of stuff as well. Obviously, we kicked it off with Pavi last week, and he gave us some like interesting insights to how he got involved in crypto, how it changed him, and that whole aspect of it as well. So I think it's only fair we kind of give our take on the whole thing, like how we got into crypto, how it's potentially changed your view of whether it be financial markets or just life in general. So I don't know who wants to kick off. Anyone specifically want to kick off, or?
Will can kick it off.
Go on, Matt. Go on, Matt.
Okay, then. Yeah, in terms of...
Doesn't have to be long.
Nah, we're already 45 minutes in, so... But in terms of how I got into crypto, can't remember exactly, but I kind of just got into like finance, business, and that whole ecosystem back in 2020, probably. Got very interested in that, started reading all sorts of books, was doing all kind of random side hustles, trying to make some money, and then all of a sudden came across Bitcoin and Ethereum, got very intrigued, did some research on it, bought before I really understood what it was. And then after I bought, I dug deeper into what it was, and then quickly dove down into the crypto rabbit hole, and pretty quickly got into like NFTs and that in 2021. Started trading some ETH NFTs and losing a lot of money on that. That's how you learn, I guess. And yeah, just been very intrigued by it ever since, and just been trying to learn a lot about it, and then started making YouTube content on it because I was doing YouTube as like a hobby as well in other niches. So it kind of just felt right to try that out. Started talking about Solana NFT specifically when that started out in like September 2021, and was like one of the first YouTubers to start only talking about Solana NFTs and have that as like my main focus. And then I rode that wave, and now it's just like more broad. Still very active in like the Solana ecosystem, meme coins, airdrops. I find a lot of different things in the crypto world very exciting. And obviously met Will in Bali in 2022 and learned a lot from him, and got into more of his world with like XRP and more macro stuff. Still need to learn more about macro economics. That's one of the things I want to get better at. But that's kind of how I got into it.
Quick question.
Yeah.
What advice would you kind of give to people who are fairly new to the space and they want to maybe potentially strive to be something like what you and Will are in terms of like being a KOL or being just better in their knowledge within the space?
In terms, if you want to be like very active, if you find it super interesting and actually want to like share what you're learning in that, I would recommend just, like I said, share what you learn along the way. Just start diving deep into anything you find interesting, and then as soon as you learn it and understand it, just like write it all down on Twitter and post it, because that's a great way to start gaining a bit of a following. And you also get to learn even more by like writing it down and explaining it in a better way over on Twitter. And then through doing that, you'll probably get in touch with like a lot of other interesting people in the space and start talking to people doing the same things and now are researching and interested in the same projects and ecosystems that you're talking about on Twitter. And that will be my recommendations.
Yeah, and I just want to add one thing into that, Matt, because that's a really key thing that you've said there. Is like, but just don't worry about being right like all the time either, because Twitter's going to help you. Like Matt's is saying, if you learn about something or you're interested about it, ask a question on Twitter, write about what you know about it on Twitter. People are going to say this part's wrong, that part's wrong, and it's embarrassing and it's hard, and it happens even now. Like when I talk about things. But it's the way to learn, and it's definitely a way to like interact, and people will interact with you if you are brave enough to put your opinion out there. If you're brave enough to put your face on a camera and start talking, people will interact. If you're brave enough to write about something that you're interested in, people will interact whether you're right or whether you're wrong. And that's definitely like how you learn. And so I think that one extra thing I just want to add on to Matt's, because I agree with everything you said, is just like, if you want to become like a KOL specifically, and when we get into my section, and I'm going to talk about this, but I've got another question for Matt in a sec. But if you want to be a KOL specifically, it's similar to a lot of things in life where it's just discipline and consistency. You just got to keep fucking doing it, even when you don't like. It's not hard to make content one day, but it is hard to make content every day for years, and that is how you become someone with a bit like with weight behind your name. Because as we've just said, and as Matt said very rightly, if you start writing your thoughts down, then people, like I said, people interact with it. And if you do that consistently, then that obviously snowballs over time. More people interact, or the people who interact with you in the first place like your opinion, don't like your opinion. Any comment is a good comment. Like as I just even spoke about with Ripple, it's like any publicity is good publicity. You got to remove your emotion and that from it, and just be brave. Is what I'd say. But
yeah, and you got to throw away any ego that you have coming into it, because when you're starting, there's always going to be so many people that knows a lot more than you, and you're going to make wrong decisions and wrong calls and have wrong opinions, and people are going to comment on that and stuff like that. So just be open to being wrong and learning along the way.
Yeah, and that's a great point. And that was something I was going to talk about in my section as well, about ego. You got to throw your ego away in any space of life if you want to develop, because you're never going to be right. Like even when you get to what you think is the pinnacle, there's always a higher pinnacle and people with more knowledge or different knowledge or a different perspective. So you've just got to get used to being wrong. And how you deal with that. But that's how you learn as well. That's the best part. It's like when you start to get knowledgeable about something and then you're still wrong, you realize that like you're really knowledgeable, because not many people would even have the knowledge that you have. Then you're still being knocked back, and so you're almost like getting to you can never get to the top, because once you get to the top, when you look, there's always like a higher mountain with other things behind it. But yeah, that ego aspect of it is huge. But what I wanted to ask you, Mats, actually, is, and it is along this line, is what has changed with you as a person? What have you learned about yourself that you could maybe pass on to other people in this journey that you've been on?
That's a good question, my friend. I don't know if there's anything too like crypto specific, but in like the whole journey of just like,
yeah, I mean, like personally, like what does it take to do what you do, like mentally? What have you had any struggles, or had good things happen? Have you been fortunate? Have you worked for something or whatever? What is fundamental, like what do you have to do? What has changed? What do you have to do every day to be where you are?
yeah, I think first of all, it obviously takes a lot of discipline. Like, first of all, you always need to work a lot and put a lot of time and effort into it, because it's very easy to, once you start working for yourself and doing this full time, it's very easy to want to just stay in bed all day and take like a day off and that. But it's important to just have a good routine, get up at the same time every day, go to bed at the same time every day, stay healthy, go to the gym, because when you also start working from your laptop, it's easy to just sit on your ass all day and lose your health, which is like one of the most important things when you're doing all this, because it makes you mentally a lot like clearer, and it's great for creativity and coming up with new ideas and that, to just like stay healthy and do some active movements and that. So I think that's very important. You caught me off guard with that question. I don't know how much more I have to add.
No, that's fair, and they're very like good things, especially health. And I think that hope this might trigger another thought in you, and it might not. But like, yeah, the question's kind of like, what sort of person do you have to become to be someone who can do all of those things? Like, to be disciplined every day isn't easy. Did anything trigger in your life that made you become disciplined, that you need to wake up at that time? Like, it's obviously not easy to wake up at the same time every day. It's obviously not easy or even fun sometimes to go to the gym, but you still do it. Like, what are the main, that's basically what I was asking. You said discipline. I think that's one of the biggest things that I would say as well. But is there anything else that's like a key component that you think to, I don't want to say being successful, because success is very subjective, but you are successful for your age. And that's a thing I'm going to probably touch on in mine. But like, I just wanted to know if there was anything else, I guess.
I mean, I've always kind of just been pretty ambitious with things ever since I was like 14, 15. Just tried to try a lot of new things, and failing. You obviously need to be very open to failing, because you're going to make a lot of mistakes, and that also plays into the part of throwing your ego away, because you're gonna have bad days where you make mistakes and fail a lot, and people are probably gonna laugh at you and not believe in you when you fail. So you need to be open with that, and you kind of just need to see the long-term goal, that like, if you keep doing this for 10 years, you're going to have amazing results, but you might just not see that in a year or two. So kind of just like look long term, and if you don't start, then you probably won't start, and you have an entire life ahead of you, so it's a long time. So you might as well just start and get into it and see where it takes you.
Yeah, I like that a lot, actually. And I'm going to build on that what you said there is like, people are going to laugh at you. They are. But to be able to, from my perspective, to be able to do more than people who aren't doing the things that you want to do, you have to be seen as an outsider. You have to get laughed at, because otherwise you're just going to conform and be doing the same thing as what the other people who are around you are doing anyway. If you want to do more than what others are doing, then you have to be able to accept that you're going to be different, and to be different isn't easy. And I think that that's one of the main things that I would say from my perspective is important, is your ability to bounce back after an issue. because you're going to come across issues like multiple, like Matt said, you've got to be able to lose. You've got to be able to lose multiple times. But if you want to win, and like, if you want to be successful, you just got to be able to get up more times than you get put down. And you're always going to get put down again. And you're always going to get put down again. But as long as you just keep getting up, no matter like how many times you get put down, like you can do like anything you genuinely want to do. And as cliche as that sounds, it could be anything in crypto. It could be anything in life, even physically, over a period of time. If you just keep doing it and you just don't accept that you can't do it, or that if you just don't accept a loss, then you cannot lose. Like literally, that is so true. And I was thinking about this when I went on a run just before like this call. I was in a bit of a bad mood today, and I thought it's fine to be in a bad mood, but you have to find ways to overcome it. And I didn't want to look at charts today. I didn't want to do things today, but I just did it anyway, because I know that like with time, there are days when you do and don't want to do things, but with time, like you will come out on top if you just keep persistent at it. And I'd say that rings true with any aspect that I've done I've had in my life. Like the biggest thing for me in terms of self-development is being able to get back up, and the ways that I put myself in positions that I find uncomfortable, and I have done in the past, to be able to find where, like how far I can push myself without breaking. And even when I break, like I'm just like, all right, well, you broke, that's it, you've done, you've had, and you've given up, and then just get up the next day and go again and do it again. And the best way I can describe that in like a personal scenario and like an easy scenario is combat sports. Nobody in their right mind wants to be roped in to a small confined space with somebody else who's going to try and inflict damage on them. Nobody wants to do that. But there's something about it that it's a good feeling, because especially after you're knackered as well, like you do a lot of exercising and then someone's trying to punch you in the face. And so you're almost putting yourself in like what I can imagine, in my personal opinion, as close to the worst thing that I could imagine that is. But if you can overcome that and keep putting yourself in that uncomfortable position, then you can overcome anything else that life can throw at you. If you can overcome standing 2 feet away from someone who's trying to hurt you and you're just trying to breathe, then you can probably overcome pretty much anything else in life. And when you look at somebody in a position where you want to be, you need to remember that there's a lot that they've done behind closed doors to get to that position. And that also, though, that their life isn't sunshine and roses as well. It's like you still have bad days and hard days. Like I'm very blessed and very fortunate in my life. But like, for example, this year, my life's been fucking tough. My life has been tough this year. And I feel like that probably, not the toughest out of anyone in the world, but it's been tough, like relative. And that probably continues forever. And that's what you've got to understand is like, if you want to do more things, you're probably going to have more problems that come your way. And actually, I'm just gonna say what's happened in my life this year, just so, because like anyone can say, oh, my life's been tough. But like my mum nearly died at the start of the year. She had a second heart attack, basically told us she was going to die. Very fortunately, and like blessings that she didn't, got through it after me sitting with her in hospital every day for like 8 weeks, 6 to 8 weeks. Then I lost like high 7 figures net worth wise working with the project. Bear in mind, I'm only worth probably like low 7 figures now. And then my auntie had a double brain aneurysm burst, and like hearing people like my parents have like a strange relationship anyway, but hearing like your dad on the phone like break down, like they're separated, but hearing your dad on the phone break down is fucking hard. Like all those things, in my opinion, are hard. Like becoming an adult is hard. Like life is hard for everybody. And I know people are gonna have harder lives than that and harder years than that. But the point I'm making is I still got up and did what I need to do every day. I still got up and like I'm at 27,000 followers now on Twitter, and I'm fucking blessed for that. Thank you everyone who tunes in and listens to my bullshit every day. Thank you. I'm nearly on 5,000, 4,999 on YouTube. Go and sub over there. Like that's one more sub to 5,000. But like what I'm saying is, life's tough and it's tough for everybody. I don't normally talk about those sorts of things online because like realistically, you guys don't need to know that. Like, it doesn't make any difference to me whether people know that or not, and it doesn't make any difference to them. But what I'm saying is, life is just going to be fucking hard, and if you can just keep getting up whenever it's hard, you will be successful. And again, for example, in my life, like I've had a company, sold it, worked in a cafe, worked in a bar, taught myself like to do different things like over time. Like, for example, I wanted to play poker, taught myself to play poker just with you. Like, if people say like, oh, I can't do that, it's because you don't want to. This is the point I'm trying to make, I think. It's like, it's because you don't want it. If you ultimately wanted to do it, like almost like your life depended on it, you can do it. Full stop, whatever it is. Because if you just think I am not going to lose and I am going to do this, no matter what, and it is going to cost you no matter. Like, when I say no matter what, I'm talking like, I don't have the same friends anymore. I don't live in the same place anymore. I do have my mum, who's amazing and blessed, and my sister and a couple of friends who have been there for a long time. But everything else has changed. Absolutely everything else has gone. And that's the sacrifice and the ego that Matt talks about there. It's like, you have to be able to give up everything if you want more than what you've got now. And you are going to probably give up everything if you want to do it one way or another. And it could be probably anything that you hold like deeply to yourself. You've got to, it's probably going to go or be tested in that period, and you've got to be ready for that. So yeah, I don't know. I think that's not like I didn't want to rant, because I was thinking about it a lot today, and I thought, never really share this, but, and not that I think my life's difficult. I don't. I actually think I've had a difficult year. I'm fucking blessed. I love my life. I live every day, and I just keep turning up even when I'm frustrated. But I think that's the recipe for success.
Yeah, I agree, and I think it's important to share some of those things as well. But that's basically my backstory. I think if it's okay for you, we'll share your stories in separate episodes and go into like one person in each episode, because we're already over an hour in on this stream, and I have some things I need to do soon. So if that's okay with you, we'll wrap it up this episode. Do you have any
next week? You need to prep your story, bro, because we're coming in hard.
Come at me.
Lovely stuff.
I feel like we hit all the fundamentals there anyway. But yeah, I'm down. We can definitely have another do this every week, can't we? But yeah, we'll let Max get away to his side hustles, his money making schemes, and leave it there. To be honest, I think we're like an hour in anyway. So yeah, join us next week. We'll be back in the same place, same time, discussing the latest stuff that's going on within the space. Let's see what happens within this week. Let's see what the week brings us. Hope everyone listening has a blessed week. Get after it. Take on some of the advice we spoke about today, and live life. Smile.
Exactly. Thanks for watching. Follow everyone in here. Follow other pros, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Peace.
Peace out.